Welcome to Night Mind, friends. Thanks for joining me in the dark again this evening. Or at least, that's what I would normally say if it wasn't so bright in here. Please, excuse me if I caught you by surprise. I thought this kind of topic was special enough to warrant a physical appearance. Of a kind, anyway. Can't say I'll be doing this again anytime soon. Puppet mobility is not all that great. Also, I miss having eyelids. But for a topic as big as this one, I'll be happy to go without blinking for a little while. Don't hug me, I'm scared. That's not a command. It's the name of what has to be and, for quite a while, will remain the absolute juggernaut god of creative internet horror in disguise. Everybody knows about this series, and if they don't, I imagine one of the 39 million people who have seen the first episode will tell them about it sooner or later. The absolutely massive impact a series like this has can't be understated. It's the reigning king of its field, and its place on the throne was very well earned. But how did a show about puppets in a world of felt and fabric hit this point of popularity? It's just some kind of parody of a kid's TV show, right? Only if you're just passing through. What begins as a normal setup for a televised puppet show turns into a madhouse of broken programming, twisted surrealist events, and moments of mental and emotional abuse toward our main characters. Inanimate objects will frequently come to life just minutes into the video, ready to interrupt everything and trick viewers into thinking that they're yet another magical, all-knowing item fulfilling the teacher role from kids' television shows. The lessons they teach, though similar at first to what you would often see on youth programs, quickly give way to logical fallacies, odd opinions, and even malevolent acts of... Wait, what is that?
Hey there!
Whoa, hold up, wait a second there.
Pretty spiffy setup you got here, but you know what could make it better? A song!
No, please don't start singing.
I am a microphone and I help you to record. 'Cause singing is an awesome way to pass time if you're bored.
Nope. Not dealing with it. I know exactly where that was going. And if you don't know what kind of horror we were about to deal with, you've come to the right place. Enough backstory. Let's get right into it before my desk comes to life and tries teaching us about wood grains and sawmills. The first episode of Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared was uploaded on July 29, 2011 and featured our main cast seated in a small kitchen. A red monster, a young boy in bright yellow, and a duck wearing a vest. It appears to be morning as they're enjoying some tea and looking over the paper, which bears good news. Stocks are flying high and the British pound is rising in value. But before our characters can take a moment to discuss the economy, they're interrupted by a notebook on the table that flips open, revealing itself to be alive. "What's your favorite idea?" she asks. Hers is being creative, and she's here to teach us about creativity. In a very direct, very specific way. Our first hint of something off about this character comes the moment she's challenged about the lesson being pushed. Red Guy is not impressed by the notebook's hair. He finds her creativity boring. And instead of explaining why using her hair to express herself is great, she just repeats, "I use my hair to express myself." We then move to the window and are asked if the clouds in the sky are exciting. The characters say no, but the notebook says to take another look, and the cloud on the left immediately begins changing. With each new shape, our child character and the duck respond in perfect unison about what they're seeing. If you listen closely, you cannot pick up the voice of the red guy. He's not going along with the lesson because, as before, he declared that he finds this boring. And it is a little boring to witness this cloud exercise. After all, our child character and the duck are doing basically the opposite of cloud watching. What's the first idea that comes to mind when you think of this activity? Two people laying out on the grass on a bright sunny day staring up at the sky, right? And when they spot a cloud, they share different opinions about what they see. They're interpreting their own visions of the amorphous blob known as a cloud, or pointing out one they see that looks kind of like an object or animal, and maybe hearing agreement from the other person before they point out a different cloud. It's all about interpretation and opinion. But here we're shown one cloud, changing form to look exactly like the object both characters are saying it is at the same time. There's no interpretation here. The notebook is directly making that cloud into an extremely specific shape, and instead of Yellow Guy and the duck sharing opinions, they have exactly the same response, said in the same inflection, at precisely the same time, for every single shape. Creativity or direct manipulation in disguise? I'm already starting to side with the red guy on his opinion of all this. Next, we go from direct coaching to explicit punishment for misbehaving. The yellow guy gets really creative, embracing the lesson by painting a picture of a clown. Or not, as the notebook immediately says he needs to slow down and then destroys it. Did the notebook tell him that was creative before he made it? Of course not, so now it needs to be destroyed in as direct, slow, and explicit a manner as possible for a long, quiet moment in which we only hear the dripping of oil. The next exercise is a bit odd, but our characters go along with it. Collect some twigs and arrange them into their favorite color. The answers from Red Guy and the Duck are both accepted, but when Yellow submits his, he's told that green is not a creative color. And while the clown's hair in his painting is green, the notebook seems to have made that rule up just to spite him after the clown painting incident. The color wheel on the instructional sheet has the primary colors of red, yellow, and blue, but the other two are more obscure choices of tan and brown. The notebook is also a hypocrite. She pulls out an image of a brain that includes a green section, and in the jumping letters for Get Creative that come immediately after, we have green letters right alongside the approved colors of blue and red. Green really might be a creative color, but because the notebook needs a reason in line with her lesson to punish Yellow Guy for displaying true creativity through free will, she has to make up a rule for him to have broken that keeps her true intention hidden, keeping people subservient in performing creative actions. If the authority doesn't tell them what to do in regards to creativity, it's not actually creative. This mental abuse ramps up to 11 when our characters are told to get creative, each with their own colored table. After the duck puts down a letter D, we see the original scene of the kitchen, followed by a flashing transition into a digital translation of the room. The camera rotates around as the room is deconstructed, revealing a crew filming the scene. What we've been witnessing is a television show. Once the camera is seated back at its original position and the room has rearranged itself, we spot a major change. Our yellow guy and the duck are now huge. They're much bigger than they were before the whole shift occurred. We leave the digital space and see that our puppet characters have now been replaced with people in suits wearing large heads, just like the red guy. Most viewers remember the horror show that comes next. Wild dancing beneath a floating demand to get creative, the arrival of an intense rainstorm, desecration of a heart with glitter, and the slicing open of a cake with the demand to get creative that has raw meat inside. The new actors celebrate in a group hug, the duck spells out death, and the meat from the cake is pulled through the mouse hole in the wall. All throughout this, our characters have spastic fits while the notebook watches. Our original cast back in the kitchen, because they're seeing this take place instead of actually doing it. The echoing scream as we fade out of the entire sequence and back to the kitchen helps confirm that it's more of a hallucination than a real event. After all, imagination is just another form of being creative, and seeing that the notebook has been guiding this entire course on being creative, it's not hard to come to the conclusion it was a forced hallucination. The notebook's end statement pretty much sums up the point. Now, let's all agree to never be creative again. The horror segment works on two tracks of meaning. The first is the notebook's way of satisfying her true intention and the lesson of creativity by making the characters afraid to be creative without instruction. At no point during the hallucination was the notebook present. She was on the table, witnessing the spastic actions of the characters as they suffered the trauma of the daydream. The secondary meaning is more for us, even though we're supposed to catch the intentional manipulation of the creativity lesson as well. Let's get creative, the notebook says, and just as the puppets begin doing so, we experience the major digital shift that not only reveals we're seeing a children's TV show, but the show itself is changing. The puppets are replaced by actors, and they're shown under the instruction, get creative. We see a storm coming in, raining and striking lightning. It's now become a dark and stormy night as the new actors go nuts, and the heart the red guy holds, the heart of the show, is desecrated under all of this glitter, a creative material. The core of the show has been lost under misguided and reckless creativity using shiny, flashy garbage. The storm rages on as the new actors cut the creativity cake. It looks like Red Guy was replaced by an actor too because he claps along with Yellow, and not only is he not the clapping type, but was never on board with the creativity lesson to begin with. The meat inside the cake is extracted, the duck signals death, and the meat is fed to the mice living in the walls who pay for it in oil during the credits. The result of all this is the death of what used to be a product of genuine creativity. The art of the show has been destroyed by higher powers on set touching it and redesigning everything. Immediately after we see it's a show, the puppets get replaced with actors and things go horribly wrong. The heart is ruined, whatever meat is made from all that misguided creativity just brings poison to the set instead, and the beautiful sunny day outside turns into the oldest cliche in the book of symbols for a very dark turn of events. A dark and stormy night. How dark does it get? Dark enough that crucial parts of the program, its heart and meat, are cut out and consumed. The show's integrity has been sacrificed for the gain of the mice that live just outside of the set, behind the wall, where they can't be seen and can't be touched. These intruders mess with the program in this video, and their misguided creativity with what had already been established ruined everything.
It's amazing what happens when you let an intruder in, isn't it?
Aw, what, again?
Let's sing about it! When you're doing your monologue, you sound so monotone. Wouldn't it be great if you sang instead and got a new microphone?
I'm very happy with the microphone I have. Don't come back. Anyway, yes, intruders are terrible. And the pattern of unwanted singing visitors continues in Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared Too. Our characters are seated in the living room around the TV, waiting for their show to come on. The day has not changed from June 19th, which is interesting, but more so is what we catch on Red Guy's side of the room. There's a cigarette on the table, and on the shelf behind him we can see the notebook. There's also an interesting picture of the 3 cast members, which we get a closer look at after this video's intruder, the clock, comes in and starts to sing. The date on here is clear enough to see. 19/6/55, the method used in the United Kingdom for expressing June 19th, 1955. As we glide from this picture to an image of nothing representing the future, we see Yellow Guy's painting of the clown, a dark reminder of our first lesson on creativity. This teacher does not mess around. When the first refusal to play along comes from the duck, proclaiming they're already clean and don't need a bath, the clock just ignores him and begins scrubbing Yellow Guy. If he says it's bath time, then it's bath time. He then contradicts himself in describing time by saying it's a ruler to measure the day and is also a merry-go-round. Time is somehow a straight line and a circle. The next refusal to play along comes from the red guy, who says they don't want to go on a journey through time. They'll miss their show. The clock's response is pretty cold.
Don't be stupid, friends!
We then go to Victorian times, where all the characters, including the clock, mention cobbles as being a staple of the era, and we even catch what seems to be a cobble store. There's also a nice rat meat vendor, which has to be a profitable venture judging by the rat that runs past in the background during this scene. We'll get to the subject of rats later on. Right now, let's check out this picture of our child character, the yellow guy, on a wanted poster for the price of £1,906. Again, a 19th of June reference. Apparently, all that really matters about the Victorian era to the clock is the use of cobbles and the presence of rats. We move on to an early expression of time as the enemy of life during an examination of trees and fruit which wither and die as time goes on. The next part is extremely clever and very much a moment of blink and you'll miss it. The duck is putting together a house of cards as the clock is teaching, which angers him and he breaks it. There's a time and a place for mucking around, he says. And when we turn back to the duck, he's fully obedient of the clock again, giving an example of birthdays as a place to just have fun and muck around. And the duck has been rewarded for his obedience. The scene moves by so quickly, you'll almost completely miss it if you're not watching closely. There, on the duck's vest, is a prize ribbon. It certainly wasn't there before either. Take a look at the shot of the duck building his house of cards, and immediately after he's reprimanded and gets back in line with the program. The red guy joins in, mentioning camping as another fun time activity, followed by yellow guy suddenly introducing us to a new character, his father. "I'm friends with my dad," he says. Notice how the camera hovers on the father's face and the sky suddenly darkens behind him after a moment, only to be light and blue again once we turn back to the red guy? Remember this. The clock then announces how time got old and turned into a mystery, and now we're in the future with tons of great gadgets and technology, like a computer. Except that the clock said earlier the future doesn't exist. We zoom out to catch sight of a big machine working on the brains of Red Guy and the duck. The duck is shown a screen with flashes of new technology, gadgets and gizmos he can have, and it seems he's not only stuck in place but quivering. He's not enjoying this experience. Yellow guy jumps in again, showing off his dad who's using a computer to look at women. A habit for him, it seems, judging by the picture he already has up on the wall. We move on to the scene with the fish, which is really just to show how ridiculous the clock's lesson is getting. The notebook can be caught hiding on the nightstand in this shot, and red guy is holding the newspaper from earlier. Once more, we see that it's June 19th. Back in the living room, the clock is convinced that he's properly expressed the concept of time and why it's important, but our characters begin asking questions because they really haven't learned anything. The clock is incapable of giving answers. He shrugs them off just like the notebook did when given a challenge about its lesson. And speaking of the notebook, there she is again behind the red guy as we switch to his side of the room, even more visible than before. The yellow guy and the duck begin theorizing on the meaning of time and its actual mechanics, and we catch sight of this. Anyone watching for the first time would have been thrown completely for a loop by the sudden appearance of a swastika as the E portion of E equals MC squared, and only after would notice the 19.6 times Y, most likely standing for year, another reference to the 19th of June. The swastika and MC squared relation is a weird way to convey a message, but its meaning is basically what the video and most videos in the series are trying to convey. E equals MC squared is the equation attributed to Albert Einstein, a German physicist who was Jewish and very much one of the Jewish Germans who fled his home at the beginning of Hitler's true rise to power. Einstein was born a German, lived as a German, had a home in Germany during his adult years, and had to renounce his status as a citizen after escaping to the United States. His cottage in Germany was later turned into a camp for the Hitler Youth and several of his possessions taken by the Nazis. So, if Einstein was Jewish and fled from the Nazis, why is the equation that serves as his greatest claim to fame being related to a swastika? These are opposites. It's entirely wrong to put them together. But one of the first thoughts a person might have when hearing about a brilliant German physicist who helped bring about the creation of the atomic bomb during World War II is that he was a Nazi. It's just instant thought relation with no actual thinking behind it. Then, when you actually dig into the topic, you come to realize that's entirely backwards. The German physicist was Jewish and completely against the Nazis. But that's the first thought relation that pops up, even if it's wrong. World War II German equals Nazi, because word relation is taught so strongly between them in schools. That automatic assumption and its level of being so severely incorrect works for the clock as well. It's a talking clock, so it must know about time. This is the perfect professor for the topic of time. Except he's not. He's terrible at explaining time, dodges questions, and is abusive in his need to force-feed his views into the characters' heads using buzzwords. The relation of clock equaling master of time knowledge is just as foolish as World War II German equaling Nazi. The clock's lesson on time is using strings just as flimsy to make connections as those you would hear for the relation of a swastika and E equals MC squared from an uneducated person. The clock, however, feels completely correct in his teachings and shows intolerance for any thinking by the duck and yellow guy, turning on a high-pitched alarm screech that literally causes yellow guy's ears to bleed. Don't try to argue with the clock because he'll only drown you out and then use the concept of time to terrify you, just as he does with our cast, making them age at extreme speed and rot away. His arm is seen on the television rocking the duck's chair as he dies and standing behind the red guy as he succumbs to old age. We zoom out to see the duck's eye on the floor from when he rotted away, and the show ends with the red guy turning off the TV. It looks like they caught that show they wanted to watch. More evidence of the true nature of the program we're viewing. It was their show after all. So, what can we take away from this episode? Once again, 2 tracks of meaning. One in the universe of the program, and one that's explicitly for us. The process by which the clock teaches our cast is the very same the notebook used. Assault the characters with poorly explained information, reprimand them whenever they challenge their teachings, and then terrify the hell out of them as the final mark of absolute authority, even if the lessons taught are insanely wrong and completely backward, kind of like a swastika that equals MC squared and the Victorian age only being known for cobblestones. The audience lesson to take away is revealed at the end this time instead of in the middle. During the first video, we caught sight of the crew filming the show, which let us know it is a TV program. At the end of this video, we see the show is on the TV. The characters have just watched their own show, and a prop from beforehand, the duck's rotten eye, was left on the floor as a reminder that it happened. Yes, all of that actually did take place and it was filmed for television, in the show these characters star in and just finished watching. It's not a hallucination this time. You can catch very subtle scene changes between the beginning and the end beyond the picture frame changing. The position of the cigarette next to the red guy has changed, the stack of books on the other side of him has been fixed up, and the cloud outside has moved. It might still be June 19th, but somehow this is another day or later time and the show they just watched is in the past. Why is this important? Because the show we just witnessed, with every last one of its glaring problems and horrible material, was broadcast on TV. Impressionable young people, like our yellow guy, just saw all of that. The next stop on our tour takes us outside YouTube after the appearance of 2 teaser videos, promotional clips for the Kickstarter to complete the series titled Help. We see the characters tied up and filmed on a camera dated 19/6/55, June 19th, 1955. Red guy reads a ransom letter as a kidnapper stands above him with a hammer, looking like some kind of militant. The second part has a very revealing section filming him with a phone where he says, "Did you catch that? Let's try it again." Money, 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 money. And there's a gas can nearby with the same symbol seen on the flag from before. We get a sign for help, followed by a US dollar, the British pound, and the euro, another form of currency in the region of the UK, along with a question mark, most likely a stand-in for any other type of currency symbol. The Kickstarter video itself is the big score. We have our characters tied up together under the flag, decorated with that green frowning face crossed out and branded with the British pound. The 4 symbols, $, pound, euro, question mark, are in all 4 corners. The characters begin talking about their situation, with yellow guy asking why they're in his dad's house, although red guy doesn't believe that's where they are. The duck says it smells like rats and gasoline. Gasoline because of the canister on the floor, and another reference to rats for a later discussion. Red guy reads the ransom letter in full, stating, "If you're watching this, then we need your help. We need money. If we don't raise enough, we'll be killed off, and you'll never see us again." As the Kickstarter video plays a run-through of the show's premise and the creator's plans, we catch sight of Yellow Guy's father on the computer uploading a YouTube video called Rat Eats Egg. Once again, a reference to rats. This Kickstarter video reveals so much more than most viewers realized. First, let's start with that date. June 19th, 1955 was a Sunday in the United Kingdom. Specifically, the 3rd Sunday in June, which meant it was Father's Day. June 19th in 2011, the year of the first upload for Don't Hug Me I'm Scared, was also Father's Day. And of course, the final episode of the series, Video 6, was uploaded this year, 2016, on the 19th of June, otherwise known as Father's Day. So, Father's Day? Pretty important when it comes to the series, and if the importance of that exact day for the series is specifically that it's Father's Day, what's important about the year 1955? The creators could have chosen a whole lot of Sunday, June 19th occurrences: 1960, 1966, 1977, 1983, 1988, and 1994. The year 1955 was chosen for a reason. That reason has everything to do with Don't Hug Me I'm Scared being a television show. In the 1950s, there was only one real channel on the air when it came to TV, the BBC, which was mainly a public service in partnership with the government. Operation of the BBC was funded by selling television licenses, which is similar to paying a cable provider in the US. The BBC didn't have much to worry about in the way of paying for their existence through advertising due to selling the licenses, and so was relatively free of that issue. The government had seen commercialized television at work in the United States, and they did not want it in their home. This all changed with the introduction of the Television Act of 1954, a law that was pushed by newly elected government officials who made it possible for there to be anything on the air besides the BBC, and for these new networks to be commercialized. The Television Act passed in Parliament and became law on July 30th, 1954, and the first new network to arrive was called Independent Television. So, while not quite June 19th, it was summer when the monopoly of the British government finally broke on television, and the staff of ITV was hard at work getting their channel ready to launch during the summer of 1955. Their premiere broadcast was on September 22nd of that year. Shortly before launch, they put together a trailer showcasing what to expect from them. The very first spoken line in this trailer starts up at such an incredibly appropriate moment for our discussion. Watch this.
Commercial television is here. Among those who will bring the new programs to you are Sir John Barbirolli.
Commercial television is here, it says, just as ITV presents children's programs as part of its upcoming shows. What better shot could you get for reference material if you're working on a series like Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared and know what kind of message you want to send? Because that's partly what it's all about. Using TV, and quite specifically, children's shows to make money, 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 just like our monstrous militant said earlier. That's why he's holding the characters for ransom. That's why his flag has 3 different symbols for currency on it and a 4th for whatever any other nation's symbol might be. That's why Red Guy's ransom note is worded the way it is. We need money. If we don't raise enough, we'll be killed off and you'll never see us again. Exactly like any television show on a commercialized network. We might also catch that this group either is or was hired by the same intruders behind the scenes using the notebook and talking clock to push an agenda. Take a look at the flag's face. A green circle, frowning, with a big X crossed over it. Green is not a creative color. But do we have any examples of something like Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared appearing around the time of 1955 or in relation to ITV? Actually, we do. Educating Archie was a comedy show featuring a ventriloquist dummy that was hosted on BBC Radio from June of 1950 to February 1958 on Sundays. In the year 1958, ITV produced a television series for Educating Archie, giving it an actual show for the first time. From the BBC, which was against full commercialization, to ITV, the first commercial network, and it's about a puppet? Seems like a pretty close hit for Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared's ancestor. And how about Billy Bean and His Funny Machine, which began broadcasting on the BBC in 1954, featuring a puppet called Billy Bean? Or The Bumbleys, a show about alien puppets who come to Earth on a mission to learn all about our planet, its children, and the fun and games and everyday adventures we all get up to. Puppets learning lessons. Where have we seen that? There was also Four Feather Falls, which premiered on February 25, 1960 for ITV and featured mainly puppets. The Adventures of Twizzle from 1957, Lenny the Lion, Pinky and Perky, Prudence the Kitten, Sooty, Toy Town, and so many others from the era that were major shows for children using puppets. Puppets were king when it came to children's programs, especially in the wake of the Television Act, which blew the doors wide open on the possibility for youth entertainers and producers who knew them to make money by selling ad space alongside their programs. But is it all about ads as we've seen so far? How can it be if we've only experienced being sold bad ideas and mental manipulation disguised as teaching? Because that's the other side of the coin as we continue to dive into what the Freedom of the Television Act really meant with our next installment, Episode 3. Still missing. Last seen on June 19th. Our characters are now in a position of being well and truly gone. That kidnapping on Kickstarter must have been legitimate. Thankfully, our friends look relatively alright even in captivity, enjoying a nice picnic outside until the duck is irritated by a butterfly that he considers a pesky bee. Yellow Guy runs off, distraught, and is approached by a new butterfly who says it's sad how much hatred there is in the world. Already, we're off on the wrong foot. Who said the duck tried to squash what he thought was a bee out of hatred? But of course, Yellow Guy just goes along with it, caught up in being approached by a little baby pigeon, as he puts it. Yet another sign that he's maybe too susceptible to all these teachers, to say it nicely. Yellow is taken on a journey to learn about love and announces that the tingly feeling he's having is actually hunger, but the butterfly isn't having any of that. No, you're lonely, he declares. That pesky bee is already turning out like our previous teachers. What he thinks is true, what you think is wrong, right down to your own feelings being incorrect. Back at the picnic, the duck and red guy finish their chicken and contemplate whether to go after their friend. There's a fair deal of confusion about why the duck stares at the camera for a moment without direction, but that's kind of the point. The action is no longer taking place on their planned and scheduled picnic, so the duck and red guy aren't sure what happens now because the show's programming has once again been hijacked by an intruder. They know they should probably go after their friend, but these two aren't used to doing anything they aren't told to. If they were to make their own decision now, that would be creative, and they've already learned how dangerous that is.
Dangerous? You know what's really dangerous?
Oh my god, really?
Cardboard and paper catch fire, you know. I thought you were trying to look like a pro.
Hey, leave my set alone. Don't touch that.
Look at all these air bubbles trapped in your wall. Did you have any clue what you were doing at all?
Where were we? Right. Third video. Okay. The butterfly introduces Yellow Guy to his friends, all of whom say they love Yellow Guy and also love their own friends and pets. Yellow Guy catches on and declares his love for the tree and a stick, and the butterfly tells him that's not how it works. Again, the Yellow Guy has jumped ahead in the lesson, trying to demonstrate he's not only with the program but can excel in it, and he's reprimanded for going further than the authority instructed. Of course, the butterfly contradicts himself immediately, saying Yellow Guy needs to save his love for his special one, which the unicorn agrees on, even though all these other characters just got through expressing their love for each other and not their special ones. We then hear the story of Michael, the loneliest boy in town, who was also the ugliest boy in town. Coincidence? Not in agenda-pushing films like this. Still, the characters contradict themselves by saying even Michael has a special one, even though he's living on his own underground being lonely because of his ugliness. We then steer right into territory that pushes an agenda so hard, almost anyone can catch it.
He's made for her.
And she's made for him.
That's the way it's always been.
And it's perfect.
And it's pure.
And it's protected with a ring.
That's the way that old love goes.
He's made for her, and she's made for him, and that's the way it's always been. It's perfect, it's pure, it's protected with a ring, and that's the way that all love goes. Notice this portion right here with the tombstones? There's one characteristic of these that never ever had to be included for us to understand these are graves, and they're right here and right here on top of them. Christian cross, showing up just as these characters give their exact, precise statement on the rules of love and that these rules are perfect and pure and there's no other way to love. You can't get much more on the nose than this one. The video is a criticism of pro-religious teachings in children's media, going against any idea besides heterosexual relationships through drawing borderlines explicitly around that model of living as good. A man and woman, a ring, and that's how it's always been and always will be. There's no other way to love, and they're not going to entertain the idea of it, because if they do, they'll upset their king, Malcolm, who they worship devoutly. How devoutly? Enough for the unicorn to put on the kind of rich scarlet, white, and gold robes that come to mind when thinking of a church. Next to the unicorn, without a word, comes Yellow Guy's father, who appears to be wearing these vestments as well. And in a group shot moments later, we see that he absolutely is. The duck is here too, and so is Red Guy, and the notebook and clock. Interesting bit about those last three. Red Guy isn't wearing any sort of vestment, while the notebook and clock, our previous intruders and mental manipulators, are wearing pure white, as if they were ministers at whatever event is taking place here. The butterfly presents Yellow with a chance to start anew. All he has to do is change his name, a common religious practice during conversion ceremonies, and clean his brain, and forget anything else he's known before this. He then just needs to put on the ring, join their king, and will never be lonely again, even though he was actually just hungry the whole time. The lessons we've seen so far have been pretty clear in their meaning, but the presentation of this one is right in your face. Two odd pieces of the video's ending that are constantly in question come up next. The sort of worm creature that has the shape of the butterfly without wings coming out of the egg, and the scene during the credits of Malcolm being burned. The larval butterfly will be brought up later, but as far as Malcolm burning goes, there are two groups being burned here. Organized religion with its Malcolm symbol going up in flames, and the gas canister used to set fire to the statue. You'll remember the gas canister as belonging to the group that's now in control of the show, holding the characters captive in pursuit of money. The group with the money and the power uses their resource to literally burn religion on TV, while the overt message in the program and in the video for us is the overt religious agenda being pushed. Two special interest groups using a kids' TV show to push their own agendas. That's pretty much the point here. As for historical reference, we do have evidence to back up that Don't Hug Me I'm Scared is shooting pretty close to what's already come before it. In 1958, the president of the United Lutheran Church of America put forward $1 million to produce a TV show for children, which premiered in 1960 and was called Davy and Goliath, a stop-motion puppet show with overt religious messages, and it did get airtime on TV stations that didn't have a religious bend. Check out this comment on the entry for Davy and Goliath from TV.com. When I was little, we used to go to visit my aunt on the weekends. She was cool. We'd watch bowling, roller derby, and monster movies. And then this came on. Far from achieving the effect of teaching me anything, the show was actually frightening. The music was rambling and off-key, the boy and his dog seemed to wander off and nearly get killed in almost every episode, and the lesson centered around the need to absolutely obey everything you were ever told. I bet a lot of people are in therapy over this. The need to absolutely obey everything you were ever told. Kind of like the attitude of the intrusive teachers we've seen in the episodes so far, right? I'd bet Davy and Goliath wasn't the only program like this around the time of 1955, and the UK has probably experienced its fair share of religious agendas in kids' media.
Isn't that a little hypocritical?
What? The religious media?
No, talking about agendas in media while you tell people what to think. Did you remember to set out Kool-Aid for them to drink?
An analysis based on recorded evidence isn't an agenda. And how did you get out of your box?
The speech of a hypocrite lured me out when I heard a dumb cat who likes to shout. Meow, meow, meow. I'm Nick Nocturne. I know everything. Let me tell you what to think, just like the villains in the show. I'm not a hypocrite. I'm important. Make sure to like and subscribe.
No, I'm not telling you what to think. I'm not. Everybody can think for themselves. Differing opinions are good. Interpretation is the best thing. I'm just presenting my evidence, my findings. You know that, right? Right? I'm not telling you what to think. You know that. Yeah. Yeah, of course you do. Let's move on to episode 4. As soon as we begin, we see a few points of interest in the room where our characters are busy playing a board game. There's the statue of Malcolm sitting on the fireplace mantle, a picture of Yellow Guy and his father with a rainy backdrop, the calendar for the 19th of June again, and a milk carton declaring that the cast is still missing. It also appears that the cigarette in its ashtray is on the mantle next to Malcolm. Interesting sights continue as Red Guy looks at the globe for answers to a question he has about the biggest thing in the world. On the corkboard, we spot the instruction, "Get creative," and a note that says Roy, with what seems like a phone number. It's been confirmed more than a few times by Becky and Joe, the creators of Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared, that Roy is the name of Yellow Guy's father. But why would he be listed by name above his contact number instead of as dad or father, especially when Yellow Guy refers to him as such? We'll approach that a bit later. The globe does come to life after another vocal cue from Red Guy, but is interrupted by a computer that suddenly appears on the desk. Obviously, the characters are taken back by this, but Red Guy rolls with it, about to ask the computer if it can help them determine the biggest thing in the world when it cuts him off and just starts talking about how great it is. As the computer continues selling its value to the cast, we can spot 19655 on the numbers chart, another nod to the most important date in the series. The computer prints out a picture of some oats which we spotted earlier on the table. Speaking of the table, the computer relocates itself there and magnifies a picture of oats on the newspaper, saying he'll help you to find something you wanted to find. Red Guy points out they already have a computer in the form of a laptop. They're all set. Still, the intruder says that's great and just keeps rolling, asking for some information. What's your name? Where do you live? What do you like to eat? That third question comes with a picture of some oats on the printout, and again, a box of oats and a question mark on the screen. Seeing a lot of oats so far, aren't we? The computer continues asking questions, seeking info on the cat's favorite color, preference of cow's or goat's milk, hair color, blood type, and allergies. Red Guy isn't having it though, demanding it to shut up and then smashing the keyboard, causing the computer to have a fit. They're brought into the digital world, or not as Yellow Guy points out because they're still at home and yet on the screen. The computer explains the idea of an online profile, an avatar representing oneself. Red Guy gets on board realizing that he just can't fight what's happening now, and we catch sight of an earlier lesson that may still be in his head, the clown painting floating in the background. The computer introduces them to only 3 things that can be done in the digital world, which is pretty limited and completely incorrect as usual for these intrusive teachers. Yellow Guy gets caught up by looking at graph types, the duck is enraptured by how you can dress yourself up online and take more and more pictures of your image, while Red Guy is shown nothing essentially. He's brought right back around to being unimpressed and cynical, leaving him as the only character left in the room not absorbed by the computer. The computer seems to have lied. The Duck and Yellow Guy are no longer just using avatars but are in the digital realm entirely. Behind Red Guy, we catch sight of Roy's favorite picture in the house, and then Roy himself in the corner of the room. Back in the digital world, Yellow and the Duck are dancing, lost in the action, and a big box of oats has joined them. Red Guy fights to unplug his friends, but they're already gone. Their brains are exposed with wires connected firmly to each. He follows the red wire from the computer both inside the digital realm and outside of it, and finds it leading into the next room. It's a very sparse area, and Red Guy is in a motion capture suit. The computer's wire is hooked up to a camera focused on the scene where stand-ins for Yellow Guy, the Duck, and Red are being held along with a new character, the box of oats with 3 bowls laid out. Someone comes along and marks the scene as cut, and Red Guy's head literally explodes. There are a few interpretations as to what this scene means floating out there, but I find it strange how not many of them take into account a few things, including one element that's truly different from what we'd normally see. This is meant to be a recreation of the set for the show, with all 3 characters, a single room, black and white tile flooring, a clock, and even the calendar on the wall for the 19th of June. Now, you can't just go ahead and make some kind of rip-off version of the show using props this bad. If there was a rip-off in progress in this room, we would not have the camera hooked up to the computer, and at least a little more effort would have gone into making the set look like a good fake. But what's really standing out here to separate it from any type of replica is the extra character, the box of oats. If we were seeing this as a poorly made replica, then yes, we would need something to stand in as our teacher character, and the box of oats would normally fill that role. If oats hadn't been directly advertised to us throughout the entire video as a product we're looking for, as the computer hinted earlier. What that computer was doing with the questionnaire was filling out a consumer profile. A whole lot of websites that work for marketing firms do this. It's associated with your computer's IP address and uses information based on your browsing history to push targeted ads directly at you. Ever search for information on a movie and then see Amazon ads about a Blu-ray copy of it following you around online? You've been a victim of targeted marketing using IP address profiles. Learning market demographics for a product is also another major way companies find out who to advertise to. This is precisely why the computer keeps throwing oats in the faces of the characters and why it's digging for information. The message is that it's performing market research while also showing them what it's noticed they enjoy and trying to sell them more of it. But besides that, because this is an episode of the show, we're receiving product placement on 2 fronts. Oats for sale, and computers, which is why the computer just keeps talking itself up as this fantastic thing, even though Red Guy points out they already have a computer. You have a computer already? Great, fantastic, buy another. This is actually pretty insidious, using product placement to serve a secondary campaign of product placement. You know what's even more insidious though? What's actually happening in this room right here. Red Guy leaves the table after several digital copies are made of him and his friends, now stuck in the computer. We know he didn't hang around long enough for the computer to get a good copy of him, which is why he looks like a spaghetti mess on the floor. Yellow Guy and the Duck though, no issues. So, with 2 of the actors digitally copied in full 3D, all that's left is to capture enough of Red Guy to make his copy, which is why he's now wearing a motion capture suit in the room with a camera trained on him. That camera, which is hooked up to a computer, is processing information as we speak, and that computer with a fully rendered digital copy of Yellow Guy and the Duck now just needs Red Guy, who is in a perfect position for his image to be captured, all to complete one goal. Recreating the set of the show without any need for the real actors, so they can make an episode or commercial featuring oats, which the studio clearly has a product placement marketing deal with already. Digital reproduction is something that happens a lot now. We progress to the point of aging actors down in ways that look shockingly real and making models that defy belief. If you have the means to recreate the stars of your show and use those digital copies in an ad, not only would you not have to pay those actors, you wouldn't have to deal with them putting up a fight about being made to sell oats. This is what's really happening here. We've been shown oats through incidental appearances to prime us for a full embrace of the product in a digitally produced episode using CGI, so the actors will not put up a fight and the producers can keep all the money. Set designers can get away with mocking up a room so poorly when everything is going to be added into the picture in post-production on the computer. Red Guy realizes what's happening and his mind is blown. This angle is more story-based to drive in a point of what's happening on top of what we know from the computer's involvement. It's a critique on the nature of pushing sales, collecting information to build profiles, and the behavior of people online, becoming wrapped up in stupid things like digital style, taking pictures in hot new clothes and losing oneself in meaningless, ever-changing data and pretty colors. As for why Roy was hiding in the corner, this all ties in shortly with a big reveal in episode 6. For now, just remember his presence as digital copies were being made of the cast.
Hey, I have a question for you.
If you're going to ask to be let out of the trash can, you've got another thing coming.
What makes you think you're so smart when everyone else has done this already?
I'm sorry, what?
June 19th is over and done. You think anyone cares anymore? Think you're gonna find the smoking gun? You had your chance and you've come in last place.
This isn't a race.
You're just going to look stupid and totally wrong. Instead of risking it all, let's have a sing-along. Forget your ideas and just let them rot. You're working for nothing, whether you think so or not.
That's not true.
Your set is pathetic and you're 2 months late. 2 months past due, you ran out of time. This isn't creative, you're wrong. Wrong! It's over. Give it up. Give it up. Just quit. Quit!
No, I'm going to finish what I started. We're almost done here. I don't want to hear any more from you. Episode 5 comes out with immediately noticeable differences as a picture of the cast on the wall has Yellow Guy frowning. He and the Duck talk about how something is missing, but they're not sure what, and the picture on the fridge shows changes that reflect Red Guy's exit from the show. You can spot the number chart on the fridge below it looks like an advertisement for a computer, and the pit bulls on the floor are for Ratty, so it's most likely not a dog but a rat that's living in the house, so the mouse holes in the walls are for a rat. There's a box of oats with a pair of eyes in the back corner behind a carton of health juice and the single egg on a plate from episode 3. The loaf of bread comes to life, followed by the can of spinach, which asks if the characters are hungry, and surprisingly, Yellow Guy says, no. It's a really direct answer. He sounds like he actually means what he says this time. But still, the can goes on, and once the meat enters the picture, the duck tells it, get off me. Now both characters are showing firm resistance to the intrusions on set. We catch a shot of Roy's Flakes, the first brand name item we've caught so far through all of this, but are encouraged not to eat it because it'll make our teeth gray. The food really ramps up its song and dance routine only to be cut off by the phone ringing, which catches them very much by surprise. The duck answers and wakes up on an operating table where the TV is showing their program. Of course, we spot Red Guy peering in through a window in the house model that is all sorts of incorrect, and the duck catches this, expressing disbelief and being reprimanded by the can before he's rewarded from the outside by a ringing phone.
I thought you said you weren't going to give a stupid play-by-play review and just get to the point.
Leave me alone.
Blah, 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 blah. I haven't heard you get to the point this entire time. Faster, go faster!
Fine. You know what happens in episode 5? We've all seen episode 5. Sure, okay. In the food group section, there's a cigarette in gel, which shouldn't be there at all. The food continues describing weird items as bad when they're good and good when they're bad, and then reversing its position all over the place because they're terrible teachers. And then even the fridge gets in on it, and we see a note for Roy's phone number again, and a note crying out for help, with Red Guy's head in the microwave and Roy lurking above overlooking the set. We see this scene because the duck is knocking the camera over while running away from the set because he's sick of being pushed around, and we catch sight of Red Guy in the corner as he's been trying to get back into the set the whole time.
Stop telling people what they already know and repeat explanations they already heard from the ones who got there before you already.
Shut up. Just shut up.
Give up and sing with me. There's nothing you can add that hasn't already been said. You're a fake. A fake.
Shut up. The duck is eaten alive by the cans, which then have his face on them because the show realizes he's not going to cooperate anymore. So they've chopped him up to pieces and sold him, which is a message on brand marketing using children's show icons to sell junk products. It's a major epidemic in the UK, and the child character of the Yellow Guy eating his friend is proof of the message. The Red Guy was on the phone the whole time and trying to break into the set so he could tell the duck to leave because the show's been hijacked and he's in danger. The talking items in this episode are more idiot teachers intruding on the set where they don't belong, and a major critique of the way that the health and food administrations and industries are constantly changing their minds, and when they come to a new decision, sometimes it's only because of money changing hands where it shouldn't be. It's more commentary on the nature of children's media being manipulated and how the media itself lies to people and sells them garbage they don't need.
Don't you feel better?
No. I broke my pacing, and you don't belong here. I shouldn't have listened to you.
Turn off the camera. There's nothing you can say that someone else hasn't said. Your explanation was made for you by others at least 3 or 4 times. Let's get creative instead.
Be creative with me. Sing. Sing.
I can't. Just leave.
Sing.
Just go away.
It's easier to quit, and you know it.
No, you know what? You're just like everything else in this whole series. You're a hijacker and a liar, preying on the fears and insecurities of people the same way the intruders in the videos do. You spread misinformation and try to mentally abuse people into your way of thinking the same way the lamp does to Yellow Guy in episode 6. He doesn't need to learn about dreams to go to sleep, and he doesn't deserve to be drowned in oil for disobeying a manipulator. He doesn't deserve to deal with the statue of Malcolm on the shelf in his room, indoctrinated by his dad's crazy religion, and the body chart on the wall, and every other reminder in this series of horribly painful and wrong lessons shoved into his brain that just keeps stacking up. This is what media like this does to people. It compounds and weighs them down until their resistance breaks, and they become another mental slave to the agenda the media is pushing in a system designed to create consumers and force mentalities of meddling producers looking to make money and only money. Because that's who the rats are. The ones behind the walls of the set, feeding off the meat of a series they've now cut into pieces with their idea of creativity. Get creative is a motto spouted by whatever advertising team was built to turn a normal children's program into a profit vehicle, which got so bad it drove Red Guy from the set and made him get a horrible, boring job in a bland, boring world that is a product of the lessons these formulated shows have taught. Every single person here is just like everybody else, and when Red tries to turn the tide and inject creativity, it's the song of an intruder who poisoned that whole idea, and he's still booed away for trying. The only action he can take is to destroy the machine that's been built to torture kids like Yellow Guy, whose own father, Roy, is revealed to be in charge and fully aware of what he's been doing, and was letting it all get so bad that they had a cigarette puppet ready to use as an agenda-pushing teacher in a kids show. This was the end goal from the start. If it wasn't, we wouldn't have seen the cigarette 3 times early on. And if they couldn't get away with peddling cigarettes to kids, they were willing to use the gel from the food group, which I'm sure would pay just as much for the same product placement given to Oates. This has been a Father's Day without a father. Roy is an absentee, uncaring figure who lets his child experience whatever trauma may come from the show while he collects money and engages in his own selfish vices. The only time we ever hear the word father is from the larval butterfly in the episode about love, who gets crushed immediately after claiming himself as Yellow Guy's own son. Just like Yellow Guy and his friends are constantly crushed by the man Yellow Guy calls his father in a machine he designed. Roy represents the entire system of rats that run programs like these and allow their sons and daughters to be exploited for profit. His day, Father's Day, now represents the opposite of what we usually know it to be about. The cast was reported missing just after June 19th, and while an apparent kidnapping did take place just before those missing posters went up, the characters really seemed like they went missing long before the kidnapping. On this Father's Day, the integrity of their show was sold in a sudden opportunity to commercialize children's programming. Even if Roy isn't the head producer, the father of whatever show Don't Hug Me I'm Scared had been turned his back and sold them off. What that show used to be went missing after the Television Act passed, and Yellow Guy's own father was involved in the sale. He might even have been the one to make the purchase, which would explain the existence of Roy's flakes in the show. Even worse was that Roy justified his actions and the treatment of his son in the program through the only thing he's ever said, quoted during an interview with the characters 1 week prior to the release of the final episode. "My silly boy has allowed his eyes to grow arrogant and rude. For this, I will take him on a trip to Punish Land." When selfish, vindictive absentee fathers abandon their children to the mercy of the media, this is the result. And when they sell or exploit their children for profit, or intentionally create media to hurt them on mental and emotional levels such as Roy, a clear master of the industry, they deserve to be vilified and rightfully hated. The long arm of an abusive father can reach you from a distance you wouldn't believe, just as Red Guy learns. This is the relation between Yellow Guy, his fellow cast members, Roy, and Father's Day in the show. A system of one generation selling its offspring for profit, abandoning them to be abused by the system, or directly using the young for personal gain. On Father's Day, this is what we have to thank our dads for, but only if we choose to let the machine stay plugged in. If we defy the false authority of selfish media, we can take back what's ours and have whatever favorite colors we want, free of outsider influence or disapproval. When you stop listening to an authoritarian disguised as a professor, green can be a creative color. And creativity is, at its core, what this giant issue of fathers selling their children is all about. One of the things that struck me while going through the series for review was how close the underlying message was to Allen Tutorial, a series I covered a while ago that demonstrated this topic beautifully. So many people who make something consider their creations to be their children. It's that expression you might hear every once in a while. That was his baby. The issue of a father selling a child born of his creativity is what led to the disastrous hijacking of the series. Roy could have been the father of the show to begin with and sold it in a literal sense, or sacrificed its integrity for monetary gain after the Television Act made it possible. Maybe he was part of the team who bought the show and took it in an abusive direction for money and the power of mental manipulation. Maybe Roy himself had enough power to buy it outright as head producer, and perhaps he was the one that actually held the cast for ransom. Yellow Guy might have been confused about being in his dad's house, but what if they really were? Whether Roy was involved in the kidnapping or not, whatever Don't Hug Me I'm Scared used to be was put up for sale, be it in a literal or spiritual sense, and we saw the start of the abuse stemming from that sale in the first episode. An intrusive character appearance with an agenda, and a visual representation of the set being redesigned. At some point, Roy became directly involved in the abusive and profit-driven direction of the show. If he wasn't the father of the program to begin with, he's every bit as guilty as whoever sold it now. This kind of story has taken place a lot over the course of history. Too many times when a creative property or platform is sold, the buyer uses it in a damaging or poisonous way, or just mishandles it entirely and destroys what used to be beautiful. After the Television Act, I believe quite a few programs on the BBC suffered that awful fate, as well as a few creations that jumped at the chance to be on TV. Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared has a message throughout that can be conveyed through just its title and its profile image. When a child is scared, they usually do want to be hugged. The message of Don't Hug Me is contradictory to natural feelings, as if the child has been taught it's something they're not meant to do, in the same way that the program in the series is used to teach wrong, misleading, or even entirely backwards information. As for the profile picture of Yellow Guy looking at his reflection from the video on time, Yellow Guy is a stand-in character for humanity itself, and the act of looking at himself as a message to viewers to reflect on what we've done to ourselves. At least, that's how I see it. In an interview with Metro, Becky and Joe were asked about the theories online, and Becky said they're all correct. Now, are they really all correct in accordance to what Becky and Joe intended as what they meant the show, its symbols, and story to be? Probably not, but Becky's response is, in itself, the meaning. Squashing creativity, denying imaginative interpretation and free thinking is what so many of the villains in the show try to do. Becky's response is pushing back against that idea, supporting the true message for the audience. Do not let others control and break your creativity. Do not let the media make up your mind. Imagination is what sparked Don't Hug Me I'm Scared in the first place and kept it going. It's not only okay to get creative, it's encouraged, even if you are scared. Well, that does it for me. Don't Hug Me I'm Scared, explained. Or my take on it anyway. The most demanded video of all time on the channel finally made. I know there are other video breakdowns and theories out there, and yes, they all beat me to showing up on time to the party. But for what it's worth, I sincerely hope you've enjoyed this tribute and explanation. And if you'd like to see even bigger projects than this, and see them come out way faster than this one did, the Nightmind Patreon is now fully active with several reward tiers and donation support starting at just $1 a month. Stick around to the end of this video for the credit sequence naming all of the amazing supporters so far who have given me the ability to do even bigger videos than this one. Yes, I can make even crazier stuff than this now, and it's all thanks to you. I'd like to thank everyone who's been so patient in waiting for this video and all my current patrons for supporting the Nightmind channel. Thank you for watching, and thanks to Becky and Joe for making Don't Hug Me I'm Scared. If you like this video, feel free to hit the like button, let me know what you thought in the comments section, and subscribe for more coverage of dark and psychological media. Once more, I'm Nick Nocturne, and I'll be back again real soon. Sleep tight.